Good evening, 49er faithful. I know I haven't been gone long. We just wrapped up a sneakerhead call-in show that happened earlier where members of the channel came in to share their thoughts about this week's Niners-Packers matchup. But this one, we're very pleased to welcome a Packers insider guest to give us that insider scoop. We've got Spencer Szymonowicz, the co-host of the Poor Man's Packer podcast. Spencer's a Packers owner and has been doing the podcast with his co-host Kyle for the past 3 seasons. How are you doing this week, and how have you been reliving this environment where the 49ers are playing the Packers for meaningful playoff seeding again?
Yeah, it's bringing back those terrible memories. I think Eric Walden's still spinning looking for Colin Kaepernick, back in 2012, I believe it was. We've been heartbroken like the last 2 years, obviously losing the NFC Championship games where it's almost like this is a different, like I'm still focused on how we've been blowing it the last 2 years where it's like still want to stay alive, but it's like the Niners again, just on top of that. I think we're more stressed out this week than we have the last 2 years going into the divisional round, but we're holding strong.
Yes, I could see there being a lot of stress there. I think I see this as being very much the pressure being on Green Bay from that respect, being the number 1 seed, having some past years not go their way, Aaron Rodgers' MVP caliber season, the Niners not being expected to really get this far. And so it sets up to where there's very little pressure on the 49ers and conversely, very high pressure on the Packers. We'll see if that has any impact on the game. I wanted to share this because I know that you shared with me a cool fact that after that epic run in 2010, which I shared, that I actually placed a wager on your Packers when I saw the odds come out, and that paid off pretty nicely. I knew they had something special that year, but you had the opportunity to physically touch that Lombardi trophy and high-five the entire team just a couple of days after the win. How was that moment as a lifelong Packer fan?
It's really hard to beat. I think the only other thing I could look forward to would be, being part of a Lambeau Leap, obviously. But
yes,
other than that, it's tough to beat. I've told the story before, but it was just return to Titletown. Green Bay's so small they can't have a parade. They don't have enough of a police force for a parade, so they have their own event at Lambeau. Sell the tickets. We were lucky enough to get the bottom bowl. They had the whole activity, the speeches going on. After that, the entire team walked around the bowl. Nick Collins carrying the trophy first. It was negative 10 degrees, I think, that day. Still had to take the glove off, rub it on the trophy right when it came by. And peak fandom moment right there.
That is amazing. It reminds me of the mental image I have in shaking Ronnie Lott's hand and seeing in person the missing pinky digit that he has, having decided to cut that off to get back into the game. There's some of these things as fans that we just will never forget. That's something that you'll tell your kids and your kids' kids. I mean, I've never had the opportunity to touch a Lombardi trophy, but I would shove my brother out of the way in order to get that opportunity.
I'd hope so.
Let me tell you. So before we get into it, I'm going to be there at Lambeau for the very first time, and it is going to be freaking cold, I hear. Any cold weather tricks or tips to attending that game?
Yeah, God, you got to keep moving. It's really not that bad once you get in the stadium. The one trick that I've heard, especially pop up this week, I haven't done it myself, but if you can get a little piece of styrofoam and you bring it with, and you put it, it's Lambeau, old school bleacher seats for the most part. So your feet are going to be down on this hard, cold concrete. You can bring the little styrofoam, put it on the ground, you get your boots on top of that instead of the concrete. And apparently that makes a huge difference throughout the game.
That is a key insider tip. And I will most definitely take that to heart and try to get something underneath my boots to try and keep those toes warm, because it is going to be freaking chilly out there. All right, let us get into the topics we are going to cover today. The first one is just a little quick injury update. From what you're hearing around the facility there, who's in and who is potentially out for the Packers?
Man, it's tough. Rodgers, Aaron Jones, they're fine. The whole toe thing and knee with Aaron Jones has been fine off the injury report altogether. Randall Cobb is back. Billy Turner will be back. They're both playing. Billy Turner has been our starting right tackle for the majority of the year. The other guys who've been out for the majority of the season, Jair Alexander, Zadarius Smith, and even Whitney Merciless, who tore his bicep 2 months ago and is already back somehow. A huge shock for every Packer fan out there.
Wow.
They're all questionable. There's also David Bakhtiari. He's questionable. Obviously, left tackle. He hasn't played a full game since last year, tore his ACL on New Year's Day last year. And then we have MVS, who's doubtful, the speedster wide receiver. Doesn't seem like he's going to play. He hasn't practiced the last 2 days, and especially, the last day of practice not being out there usually means you're not going to play. So we'll see. It's been a very weird year with the injuries just because Zadarius Smith has been on the IR since week 3, I believe. He hasn't played since week 1. So it'll be a weird combination of getting guys back and kind of trying to refine a role for them because they've been gone for so long. But
yeah, right. If you had to bet on whether David Bakhtiari plays, because that seems to be a big one for 49er faithful, knowing whether he's going to be out there or not, what would you say? You think he's going to be a full go?
I think he'll play. So he did play week 7 or week 18 against the Lions. 28 snaps is all it was. He was kind of on a pitch count. I wouldn't be surprised if they do kind of a similar thing where they rotate. Matt LaFleur has been against that in the past. But man, it's just, I don't know anything, but it seems tough to get a left tackle, albeit David Bakhtiari, one of the best tackles in the league.
Right.
But he hasn't played in a year, and now you're putting him up against one of the better pass rushing teams in the NFL. It's been miraculous how great the offensive line has played with all the injuries. So I don't even know if David Bakhtiari playing would be a huge, boost to the offense just because we haven't seen him in a while. He could be very rusty.
Yeah, it could actually throw off the balance of the offensive line. Is it fair to say that the Packers are at their healthiest at this moment that they've been pretty much all season?
I'd say so, yeah. I mean, we actually got more injured during practicing this week than we were at the beginning of the week with MVS going out,
I didn't realize that was a fresh injury.
Well, it's an older injury. It happened a couple weeks ago, but he practiced on Tuesday, and then Wednesday, Thursday, he didn't. So it seems like something flared up there. So we'll see. But yes, healthiest we've been all year.
Got it. Do you anticipate any of these folks will have significant rust that they have to knock off? Any of them you're concerned about being out there and getting tested early?
Well, it's, Billy Turner, too. He's been off for a month, and it seems like he'll be the starter at right tackle once again. Kind of the same thing with David Bakhtiari, where you wonder, if he's ready for the task again. I would think Billy Turner, I'm a little less worried about. But someone like Jair Alexander, too, is one of the premier corners in the league. He hasn't played since week 6, I believe, and he, matched up against Debo quite a bit in the week 3 matchup that we had. So I don't know. I think a lot of guys who are coming back are going to be in a very limited role. That's how Matt seems to bring these guys back as well. So I don't know. We're gonna find out. Beat reporters for the Packers have been hounding Matt for these injury questions all year, especially this week, and we still really don't have that great of an idea what role these guys will play.
A lot of gamesmanship by both coaches with regard to injuries. It's pretty hilarious that they try these little games against one another. Percy, one of the Packer fans in the chat, we've had a few this week that have been hanging out, says, I can't wait to see Whitney and Devondre and Z and Jair all out there. Again, the healthiest they have been in some time. All right, so let's get into what 49er faithful are most excited to learn in this one. How have teams successfully attacked the Packers so far this year? They have clearly not been defeated very many times, as their record would indicate. But how have the teams that have had success gotten that success against the Packers?
Yeah, especially talking offense here coming after them. There's only really 2 ways. It's you pressure the quarterback or you have Jordan Love start. That's been the 2 things that have stopped the Packers, so far this year, because against the Saints, Rodgers never got all that comfortable. Obviously, Jordan Love against Kansas City was pressured, I think, 40% of his dropbacks. Minnesota, we lost as well. You have to get Rodgers uncomfortable, because
Right.
usually he's back there, and especially early on in his career, it's like we could score every single time he's back there. But now he's turned into more of this role of the ultimate, and this is not the best term, but game manager, I'd almost say, where he takes what's there, and it's like any other time with Rodgers through his career. It's getting there with four, getting pressure with four, dropping everyone back in coverage, which is, the most cliche, like, duh type of thing for a quarterback. But that's what it is for Aaron Rodgers. He's seen every type of exotic blitz there is out there, but it's really just, if you can line up, get pressure, just get that little bit of hesitation in his game. That's what has really thrown us off this year.
Yeah, it was interesting in our first matchup. It felt like on defense, DeMeco Ryans had not grown into the defensive coordinator that he has now at this point in the season. But you saw that he had no answer for the chips on Nick Bosa, and that he wasn't able to disguise very many coverages and make anything very complex for Aaron. It felt very easy for Aaron to dissect the 49ers defense in that one. I think the faithful are hoping that it will be a different go-round. We'll continue on this topic, but do have a couple of super chats to bring in from the audience. First one, pardon it, mildly disrespectful, not to you personally, but to the Packers, as you might expect. Joe Stoll, one of our sneakerheads, saying, Rob, sounds like you have to bite the bullet and buy a cheesehead to keep your boots warm, in reference to the idea of keeping the boots up off the ground. I would never do such a thing. That would be far more disrespect than I'm willing to do in someone else's house. That's for sure. Silverado Kev, who does spend time as a defensive coordinator, has been on the channel saying, at Rob Schuh, due to tendencies of Green Bay and the conditions, I'd go press cover 2, press bail technique with outside shade, timely blitzes, and bracket Adams. Play the run straight up and get after Rodgers constantly. This is spelled out very well by Silverado Kev here. Look forward to having him back on the program. I do think that the Niners will look to be effective in playing the run straight up. And they have, because of the changes since week 3, they now have DJ Jones and Eric Armstead playing the interior. It offers a very unique lineup with most likely Nick Bosa on one side, Samson Ebukam on the other, that you can both stop the run with those front four, but also because Eric Armstead and DJ Jones are so quick, you can get after the passer. So if the Packers attempt to pass on those early downs and take advantage of a strong run defense, potentially the 49ers are still in good position there. I'm worried about the suggestion of the timely blitzes. I agree it has to be done, but Spencer, you can speak to this. Rodgers seems pretty damn good at making teams pay when they bring the extra defender.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I was kind of talking about before too, where he usually knows what's going on for the most part, for who's coming on the offensive, from the defensive line, I should say. And one problem that we did have earlier in the year was Royce Newman starting at right guard, where he seemed to get mixed up quite a bit anytime someone would, rush him. I'm trying to think here, but he's been replaced. Lucas Patrick's now taking over, and now with Billy Turner back, hopefully we can hold up a little bit. But yeah, that's the one thing, because when we get the Rodgers crab walk, that's when everything falls apart for the Packers, and I'm just got to keep going.
That makes a ton of sense. So in looking back at some of these games, I was pretty weirded out by the fact that the Browns were able to run all over you, right? They rushed for 219 yards, 8.8 freaking yards per carry, but they lost the game. How did that one turn out? Like, how did the Browns manage to be so successful in the run game, but also manage to lose it?
I haven't watched a lot of Browns games the last few years. I don't think many people have watched many Browns games in general, but
not unless they have to.
Yeah, you kind of had this thought that Baker Mayfield is a decent quarterback, but watching him, I mean, I know he had a shoulder injury, but he threw 4 picks in that game.
Oof.
Could have been 5 or 6. It was just so bad. And even the last drive, it was under 2 minutes. And when they were passing as Packer fans, we were like, they should keep running the ball. They should have just kept running the ball. And it's, like you're saying, you're surprised that we won that game. A little misleading when you see those stats. You'd think that the Browns won that game, but it's almost like the Packers run defense in general. We're 11th in rush yards allowed in total in the league, but we're 31st in yards per carry, allowing 4.7 yards per carry right there. So
right,
if you run the ball, you'll have success, but teams just, playing from behind or just trying to get away from it haven't ran as much as they probably should.
Yeah, it does set up for the 49ers being able to run. And I've heard mention of this many times. Texas Niner, one of our sneakerheads on the channel, bringing this in from another Niner podcaster at Rob. Jesse Naylor's been calling out a stat that rings true for the Niners: 21 personnel, and how much we run that and how little all opponents are not used to actually defending that. And it came up on NFL Live on ESPN this week, how defenses are ill prepared because the 49ers may come in with one package and then the defense puts in their substitution package to combat that, but you don't actually know what formation the Niners are going to run out of because they have such positionless football players with the way in which Deebo Samuel has been operating. All right, well, if we flip this around from the Niners to a specific player on the Packers, talking about a proud alumni of Palo Alto High School, where I also went to school, Davante Adams coming in. I do find it, a little bit humorous that he was a Viking before becoming a Packer. I'm sure that is not a fun stat there, but a different Viking, a Palo Alto Viking. But yes, I hailed from the same high school. He has been crushing it. 123 receptions for over 1,500 yards. Clearly, teams have struggled to contain him. How have teams gone about limiting his success most effectively? Nobody has shut him down. I went back through the games. No one has shut him down. But a couple of teams have limited him, specifically Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Kansas City. How did they limit that production in those matchups?
I mean, Baltimore, and it was talked about a lot that week afterwards. Davante Adams even pulled pictures up during a press conference showing people, but he was double covered just about every single play. They were always shading the safety that way. In the red zone, he literally would have two guys lined up against him, and that's been the most success, that defenses have had against him. And bringing up Kansas City, once again, that was a lot of pressure, and it was Jordan Love throwing the ball. It's the first time I've seen Davante Adams frustrated as a wide receiver was with Jordan Love back there. Even with Brett Hundley, Davante Adams was performing very well back in the day, but it's honestly just double covering him. That's all you can do at this point because he's like the best receiver in the game off the line. You can bump him too, but that's kind of risky. Once again, that's something that gets the offense out of flow, gets Rodgers out of it too, and Davante. But if you're going to come up and try to be physical at the line, Davante very well could just get out of it too. And he's one of the more impressive receivers in the league, obviously. But if nothing else, he's not a very fast guy. It's just he makes everyone look so slow who's covering him. And I don't know. I'm hoping we can see more of that on Saturday. But
I bet. I mean, that seems like a recipe for success for the Packers. If you were drawing up the game plan, would you throw multiple bodies at him and attempt to limit him as best you can, or would you focus on everyone else and try to make Davante single-handedly beat you with Aaron Rodgers? Which way would you go if you were drawing up the defensive scheme?
It's really tough because you want to take Davante away. Obviously, you can put two guys on him.
Right.
But at the same time, over the last 5 weeks of the regular season, Davante Adams led the league in touchdowns. Number two was our number two receiver, Alan Lazard. So someone who you haven't heard too much about, but he's been getting open of late. And at the same time, we had the two running backs too. I'd still lean towards trying to take Davante out of the game, but at the same time, I would think LaFleur is prepared for that. So it's pick your poison. I think I'd go with trying to take Davante out and seeing what happens with everyone else. Randall Cobb's coming back for the first time in a month too. Maybe he's rusty and you'd rather play with him and Lazard than Davante, but that's what I would do.
I like that. Texas Niner, one of our sneakerheads, coming in saying, I think Davante will be surprised by how our rookie, Ambry Thomas, has grown. He certainly has by leaps and bounds. J-Tan talking about bracketing Adams. I do think that that's going to be a technique used by the Niners. Silverado Kev, this is why I like the press bail technique. Got to chuck that outside shoulder, then bail with eyes on Rodgers. Man, you got to try to get Rodgers to throw that pick. He's only thrown what, two in recent memory. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I think it's four all year. It's
four all year. Yeah, I think the two stat that I'm pulling out is over some span of weeks. But yeah, 4 interceptions all year. Crazy stat. Having a hell of a season I think 49er faithful are hoping that we can get pressure on him. But on the other side of it, if we go look at the Packers defense and what they're attempting to do to the 49ers, how they're attempting to take away the run and get after Jimmy Garoppolo themselves, who do you see as the biggest game changers on the Packers defense? Who do you think is going to have the biggest impact on this game in disrupting things?
Yeah, there's a few big names on the Packers defense. Obviously, Kenny Clark, Jair Alexander's coming back, Preston Smith, who a lot of people are familiar with as well. But I'll give you three guys who've been a little more under the radar. First, right off the top, Davante Campbell. He's absolutely changed the entire defense here. You know, we haven't had a good inside linebacker in at least a decade. We were wondering how long it's been since we've had an inside linebacker this good. It's literally Ray Nitschke. Devondre Campbell was just named a first-team All-Pro, first one since Ray Nitschke, who was playing for the Packers in the 60s. And he's completely changed. We've struggled against the run, but when he's in there, he's the one guy who seems to make the stops, and he's very good at covering out of the backfield. He did line up against Debo a few times in that Week 3 matchup, too. So he seems to be the guy who they initially at least will shade him with. Other than that, Rashawn Gary, the first-round draft pick from a few years ago, he only has 9.5 sacks on the season, but he does have the second most pressures in the NFL, which is a little known stat right there.
Yeah.
And outside of that, too, Rasul Douglas, who he's been a bit of a story as well. He was picked up off the Cardinals practice squad earlier this year, has 5 picks. You know, we like to say he ended the Cardinals season after having that pick, on the Thursday night football game. But he's a guy who apparently had literally learned how to watch film this season, where he said with the Eagles, they didn't even show him how to do that. So This year he's been grinding, watching tape, and you see it now where he's getting his hands on a lot of balls. And that's the one thing, I'm a little apprehensive going up against the Niners defense, but I keep going back to Jimmy G, and I'm like, he's got to make a mistake. He's going to throw something to Rasul. That's what I'm hoping for.
I think there's a healthy chance that he gives you an opportunity for it. That's for sure. Do you believe that the Packers will play primarily to stop the run and force Jimmy G to beat them?
Yes, I would assume that's what it is, and that's what Joe Barry, our new defensive coordinator, has been all about. A little bit more than Mike Pettin, who literally kind of said, we'll let you run the ball. We just don't want to give up the big plays. Joe Barry, the first thing that they're really trying to do is stop the run. Hasn't gone the best at times this year, but at the same time, like we said, teams haven't ran on us either. So I would assume we're going to stack the box, try to stop the run game, stop Deebo Samuel. I'm getting nightmares about him. And honestly, one of the last things I'm worried about is really getting pressure on Jimmy G, because I think he's gonna make mistakes, and I'd rather stop the run game than worry about getting pressure in this game.
Yeah, I think that if I were scheming against the 49ers, I'd be focused there as well. And Niner faithful feel the same way. Texas Niners sneakerhead coming in saying Jimmy's going to be good for 10 to 15 passes. We'll be running the rest of the time. People are hearkening back to the playoff run of 2019. Yes. Eric Crocker coming in the chat. Eric Crocker, ex-NFL player, also a streamer for the Niners. Wow, getting his hands on a lot of balls. Yeah, just throwing that out there. Eric, appreciate you bringing that in. Appreciate you making me smile a little bit on this one. All right, let's transition to the Packers attempting to run the ball. The Packers with their two-headed monster. I mean, when I hear Quadzilla, the Quad Father, right, it makes me a little nervous when you're talking about single digits cold. Clearly, the Packers have a very elite duo of running backs in Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. How do you envision that workload being split between the two? Who do you think gets more carries out of those two?
It's been really tough because a lot of Packer fans, and since we drafted A.J. Dillon, we've obviously talked about the thighs a lot. And we keep looking forward to these games where he'll be the lead guy, and that hasn't really happened so much. Him and Aaron Jones have split carries pretty much 50-50 all year. He did get a few more the last game at Lambeau against the Vikings when it was colder, but I wouldn't be surprised to still see that type of 50-50 split there at the same time. I mean, we can go back to the NFC Championship game last year where the first play of the second half, Aaron Jones fumbled, got hurt. And in that entire game, A.J. Dillon only got the ball 3 times. So running the ball. We had Jamal Williams then as well. But as Packer fans, we'd like to see A.J. Dillon a lot more. We are also the number one team in the NFL on 3rd and 1, converting on 90% of those plays. And I know A.J. Dillon, he's up there in Pro Football Focus as one of the better backs in the league. We'd love to see him there. It's kind of one of our dreams. He even showed up 2 weeks ago for a game, not wearing a shirt, just having overalls when it was like 20 degrees out. So he's kind of that winter back we've always been hoping for. And I'd like to see Aaron Jones hitter and then follow up with A.J. Dillon, who's going to run guys over. And we've seen a lot more of having them both on the field of late as well. So hopefully we'll see that as a Packer fan in this game as well.
Ooh, and so if you fall behind, if there's the rare incident where the Niners jump out to an early lead and the Packers are in pass-heavy mode, would you expect to see significantly more Aaron Jones in that instance?
I would think so, but at the same time, it was a big deal was made about A.J. Dillon and his hands coming out of the draft, and we took him in the 2nd round, and we got a lot of crap for that. But they both have over 300 yards receiving on the season. I could see either one of those guys still being out there in that type of situation. So I don't know. We really have no limitations on offense for the most part, because we've been shocked with how great A.J. Dillon's hands have been too. And that's something else where I think to curb that pass rush that you guys are going to have is to throw the ball outside to the running backs and just slow that down.
Yeah, get the ball out in the flats. That makes a ton of sense. Joe Stull coming back in to clarify here. Didn't mean any disrespect with the cheesehead comment earlier. I am thoroughly enjoying the two-sided conversation. I am nervous with the return of Randall Cobb with Adams. It is a wily veteran in Randall Cobb, certainly very familiar with what Aaron Rodgers likes to do. Would you anticipate Cobb playing primarily out of the slot in this one? That would be my guess.
I would think so, and it'll be nice to have him back too. Like I said, Allen Lazard's filled in very well, but Randall Cobb, when he was playing for us, it seemed like every 3rd down or every catch he had was a conversion on 3rd down. So I'd look for that in this game too. He's Rodgers' guy, before Adams was his guy, and he just knows where he needs to be to get open, and Rodgers is going to find him.
Yeah, they have that mind meld going on, which is always scary with Aaron Rodgers. It will be interesting. I feel like that's a better matchup for our primary nickel cornerback, K'Wan Williams, to be going up against Randall Cobb than one of the speedier guys, because I do think that it is those deep shots where I worry most about our slot cornerback, and he was recently burned by Amari Cooper in that game against the Cowboys. Well, we were laughing about this before the game because it's sort of a comedy of errors, but 49er faithful think to themselves, well, no one is possibly worse on special teams than the San Francisco 49ers. Au contraire, by just a small margin, the Green Bay Packers are also atrocious in the 3rd phase of the football game. What's your concern with the Packers special teams unit?
It's the coverage units, and all the Packer fans out there know this, and it's our punt returns. So Amari Rodgers, rookie out of Clemson, we were all very excited about him when you took him in the draft. He's probably been the most disappointing Packer this year out of that draft class. When he's back there on punts, I would feel more comfortable if I were back there catching, because he's muffed a couple. We do have a guy on our practice squad, David Moore, who we moved up. We literally moved him up for the Week 17 game, and in that game, he had the longest punt return in 3 seasons.
Whoa.
So, and our special teams coordinator, Maurice Drayton, he's still doing that gamesmanship, isn't saying who will be the returner. But if Amari Rodgers is back there in this game, Packer fans are going to be irate. And if I were a Niners fan, I would be very excited. You can't take a bathroom break on special teams in this game, because there's one of these teams are going to screw up. It just has to happen.
Yeah, it seems that way. The Niners can't, even when it's obvious, cannot stop a fake field goal or a fake punt, it would seem, to save their lives, except for DJ Jones. Our 315-pound defensive tackle made a open field tackle like a middle linebacker to stop one fake field goal. But other than that, it has been atrocious. We cannot kick the ball into the end zone on kickoffs to save our lives. Our punter has a good leg. Robbie Gould is pretty old, but somehow off the guarantee neither one is able to consistently put it in the end zone, and the coverage unit is not very good. So I don't like the sound of any resurgent return men coming in. I hope that it is Amari Rodgers out there. I hope that that's the case for the Packers, because we need all the help we can get in that department.
Yeah, and to follow up what you're saying too, Robbie Gould, obviously one of the better field goal kickers in the league. Crosby had his struggles a lot midseason. He's been on a bit of a roll here too. A big talk has been the whole field goal operation. We even had Brett Good, our old long snapper, on our podcast earlier this year just to talk about it, because it became such a problem. I don't know if you remember that Bengals game early on the season where there was 5 missed kicks in the last 10 minutes of the game. All of them would have been game winning. So another thing too, it's Crosby at Lambeau in the cold. Every one of these field goals, we're watching the snap in the hole just to see if that's working out. That's where we're at for the special teams for the Packers right now.
I see people agreeing with you in the chat, letting it be known that, yes, it is a concern. All right, getting down to the nitty-gritty here, getting down to the final. What is your game prediction? How do you see this one breaking out? What do you think the keys to the game will be? And if you're comfortable with it, how do you see that final score coming down?
Yeah, it's tough because, once again, I go back to the cliche, we want to score first.
Yep.
Heard that pass rush a little bit, but at the same time, that hasn't been the Packers' MO this season. We've been one of the worst teams in the first quarter on offense this year. This Lions game was about the first time we scored on our first drive in a long time. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Niners even came out and had an early lead. The Packers slowly came back, because that's what we seem to do, especially the second quarter this year. The offense has been great for whatever reason. I don't know. It's like you said at the top, the Niners just give us the heebie-jeebies, and I'm glad that Jimmy G is starting. If Trey Lance was starting, that would especially. I didn't watch him play the few games this year that he started, but it would obviously bring me back to Colin Kaepernick and Eric Walden, like I said, spinning around looking for him. So I don't know. I think it's going to be a tough, gritty game. My score prediction, I'd say 28-24 Packers. If they play this game 10 times, I think the Packers win 7 of them. But, man, it's the Niners, and the Packers don't play well against the Niners in the playoffs.
It's true. There is a little big brother, little brother syndrome that exists, or at least that storyline is out there, and a couple of the games have served as evidence of it. It will be, I see this one as a very close one, and I agree that, if you played this game multiple times, it would come out a different way each time. I do think that these teams match up pretty well against one another. My hope, obviously, is that the 49ers' strengths coincide with the Packers' weaknesses. But when I hear about this team getting healthy at the right time, having that additional rest, the 49ers traveling significantly, being in playoff mode for 3 weeks now, it either will bode well for the San Francisco 49ers in coming out quickly, as you referenced. If they can jump out because they're the ones that are hyped up, they're the ones that have been in playoff mode for a while. Potentially, the Packers are a little bit sleepy, having the additional rest. But the other fear is that they come out fresh. They come out fully recovered. They come out with, a new set of players that are recovering from injury that gives them the added advantage. So you could see the storyline going either direction. To me, the direction of this game will be decided. The outcome of this game will be decided by who is more effective at running the football and who can control that time of possession, keep their defense rested, and then get after the opposing quarterback. I do see an opportunity for either team to really harangue the opposing quarterback and bring them down, get significant pressure, hit them, because those quarterback hits add up on these cold weather days. And it certainly looks like it is going to be brutal out there.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what we're all hoping for, too. We've been waiting for a nice, cold Lambeau playoff game again. We haven't had one under 20 degrees since the Dez didn't catch it game. So, and, the big stat, I'm sure you're aware of it, too, how Jimmy G hasn't thrown a professional pass in under 40 degrees. Even with New England, he only had the 3 snaps where he just kneeled, didn't even have to throw. So,
right,
especially with the shoulder and the thumb injury, once again, he's got to make these mistakes. And we've been waiting so long for this cold weather game. Like you said, it could be decided in the trenches, in the run game as well. Maybe A.J. Dillon running the ball. That's what we're hoping for. But We'll see. It's weird for us too, because especially, I mean, before this year, really, the Packers have always been a finesse team. And when we beat you guys week 3, it was the first time where it was like, maybe we're a little tougher than we thought we were. And I mean, what better way to figure out who's the more gritty, tougher team in the playoffs at Lambeau when it's going to be like -5 wind chill. So
Yes.
really looking forward to it.
It's going to be great bragging rights. And since we're going the cold weather route, I gotta show my parka
boy.
here that I'm wearing in the game.
Okay.
It's a throwback to the 90s, as it should be for this rivalry. It's a classic.
Yeah.
It is a beauty. I mean, this thing. Oh, uh-oh. We got a spill going on. But
Well,
yes, it is a beauty.
The next one, you got to have layers. I mean, how many layers are you thinking of wearing? You have to have at least one long sleeve, another shirt underneath that, a hooded sweatshirt, then maybe even 2 jackets. It's gonna be tough. Especially, I mean, are you planning on tailgating a little bit beforehand? Because that's where you're really gonna get cold.
I am. I'm looking at going to the all-you-can-eat buffet that I've heard about. That's right there.
Okay. I haven't gone. Well, obviously, last year would be a lot tougher. I haven't gone in a few years, especially in winter. But it's a whole different atmosphere. Games at Lambeau in the winter, it's a lot more hollow. It's football. It's the way it should be played.
Yes, as it should. As it should. Well, thank you so much for coming on the program. This has been a blast. I absolutely enjoyed this. Pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for joining me and discussing the Niners Packers. It's going to be a hell of a matchup. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. I'm looking forward to it being done. I want to get past this game. The Niners, we've been looking forward to the playoffs all year as the Packers. We've won 13 games the last 3 seasons. I haven't been this nervous about a playoff game in years, which is really saying something. So it's got to be awesome. I hope, but we'll see.
Yes, and fans will be sad that, yes, that sound you heard was the Cheers mug hitting the floor and breaking, unfortunately.
Oh,
I will need to purchase another or repair it because that is a travesty, and I am devastated about it, but had to show off the parka. It had to be done. Had to be done.
For sure.
Always a pleasure. I look forward to the game. Thanks so much for coming on. Until next time, I will be using DJ Jones's barbecue sauce here. Cheers, 49er faithful.